My name is Larry Robles. I'm the head coach of Bell Gardens High School wrestling team.
First question, what are your values as far as competition goes?
Pretty much my values, what I expect out of my wrestlers is to have respect for themselves, to the teammates, to the coaches, as well as to other wrestlers from other high schools.
Okay, do you motivate your athletes? If so, how?
I could be honest with you, motivation right now is the hardest thing I'm teaching and also learning as, being a 7th-year wrestling coach, well actually a 5th-year head coach. And motivation is just one of those hard things to teach to a student. The best way I've been doing right now is teaching them, giving positive input. And even when the time gets tough, in wrestling as practice or just in competition, just trying to give that much encouragement as he or she needs just to keep on, with actually just keep on wrestling with the program and not quit the sport.
Okay, how do your athletes react when they lack motivation?
Like I said, trying to encourage kids is the hardest thing, how to motivate them. And I'm still learning that and trying to reach different kids, especially in the community that we live in the city of Bell Gardens. A lot of these kids usually come from broken homes as it is already. So coming into this room, they are already broken down. So again, I use the thing of trying to see when they're lacking motivation, the signs of them, not being having any interest, they're lost, they get just spaced out, or they just don't want to show up. A lot of times also just being a clown, by horsing around is also a sign of lack of motivation. And what I always see is that can also lead up to a way of cancer, is by saying cancer spreads. Same thing. They have lack of motivation, the whole team can possibly have lack of motivation.
Okay, have you seen any changes in the sport throughout time? Has the sport become popular or has it stayed the same?
Through the years, besides rules, being changed and not being as rough as they were back in the days, they were more lenient on moves. But I understand that those rules are implied to be this, for the safety of the wrestlers. I can understand that. Yeah, it has changed. When I was wrestling back in days, and even before that, it was a very popular sport. To the point it was dying out when I started being an assistant coach, even a volunteer, to the point that even the Olympic community was already taking the sport away from the Olympics. But due to the what was great is that the not spectators, but as well spectators, but more celebrities, wrestlers themselves, and anyone who was in the wrestling community helped by giving a voice and actually brought back wrestling to 2016 Olympics. So yeah, at this point in time, wrestling is getting popular, but I believe people are not willing to try the sport itself because the high demand of a workout.
Okay, throughout the time that you have taught, has there been an increase in participation in your school?
Yeah. As again, I said, working at this high school, I started 7 years ago, and I started as a volunteer. And just recently, there was some paperwork that I just came across that the school did a average number through the years. Through the first several years I was working here, as well as being as a coach, assistant coach, or in a volunteer, the average number of wrestlers enrolled in 6th-period wrestling class was only 7. Till now, which is 7 years later, we're averaging about 35 students per year that are enrolled into the wrestling program. So yes, there has been more improvement of numbers coming in, more participation. It's just a matter of time that, again, we get to the number of 60 kids, 60 wrestlers in this wrestling room, just constantly wrestling.
Do you believe that wrestling is more of a male sport?
No. Wrestling's always been considered as a co-ed sport. And nowadays, now I have 3 wrestlers that are females. where back in the days I did have 3 wrestlers, but they were just more concerned about being stat girls. And as yourself, I think you also made a difference as, you know, an ex-wrestler for Bell Gardens High School. You were one of the first wrestlers to actually compete, and even compete in CIF females tournament. And that led for more females to try out and see if the sport fills out for them. And you know, at this time I do have, actually I had 4 this year, but going to next year I would have 3 female wrestlers, and possibly more as other females in the school, or if they tell other elementaries or intermediate female students, they might have more of interest to compete, as well as UFC and even the Olympics has female wrestlers. So it's a great opportunity for everyone.
When you introduce a new skill, how do you present the skill?
I first try to be more vocal about, or verbal about, the technique we'll be going over, and I actually try to demonstrate with either an assistant coach or someone within my weight class, and just really be more precise of you know, little details of movement, you know, footwork, handwork, core changes, your hip. And once we kind of understand that concept and maybe perhaps they get it, we can actually finally teach a full movement with one sudden move, not just having these little tiny steps of little pauses in the center. So I mean, it's more. And then after that, if they don't understand it, I try to maybe be more try to relate something to them that maybe is, you know, maybe something that's in their interest. For example, I don't know, I'm trying to think of basketball or some other sport that there's a certain movement that the technique consists of.
How much of the skill is practiced till you move on to teaching a new skill?
Well, it varies. It's very on during the season. Like right now we're off season, so I can really get more precise on technique and even stay on that one technique for a long time until we perfect it. Since, you know, we have all the time in the world, we got what, 9 to 10 months to prepare for season starts. So this way, you know, there's also more moves. Once we perfect that move, there's another move that goes within that, which we call chain wrestling. So it's just one move after another, and that's how we kind of go out during the off season. But during off season, we're really on a short schedule. We only have 10 weeks within the season. It's usually sometimes 9 weeks before we get ready for league finals or the final season, end of the season. So most of the time during on season, I pretty much go through it quickly, and just hopefully some students would prefer one technique over the other, and then during that time we can even work on them individually, perhaps before or after practice, during season.
How is giving feedback to the whole team different from when you give feedback to an individual?
Feedback, it varies. If I give to a team, it's more of a team issue, more of a teamwork that I'm trying to implement as much as possible. This, you know, team equals family. These are pretty much your brothers and sisters for about 10 weeks of the season, or even sometimes if you're off season, this is what you spend most of the time with. So a lot of time when I give feedback to the team, it's more of a team effort, and there's no fingers to be pointed out to. We just did, you know, one of us made a mistake, we all made a mistake. And as additional comes to the coach, if my teammates or my wrestlers lose, guess what? The reason why they lost is because of the coach. So I try to implement them as a team effort, as feedback, and then I also just try to tell them, like, here, you know, these are the mistakes we have done, and we need to improve them. So where I used to be a very negative type of coach, and I just noticed that never worked, so I'm taking a different aspect of that. But as an individual, feedback, I can talk to a wrestler one-on-one, but here comes a more complicated part. Not every wrestler is the same emotional person, so you need to learn how some people can take information, where some are very sensitive, where you have to be very soft spoken and be very polite, where others are they have a little thicker skin where you can yell at them and be very demanding, and they'll respond that way. But I mean, again, you have to know your wrestlers.
Have you seen any changes from your athletes after they have participated in the sport? Like, have they developed confidence, or has the sport affected their personality in some way?
Yeah, I mean, in any sport, you should see a certain different attitude with an athlete. There's several stories. I mean, from the bad boy causing trouble on campus and in the street, becoming a well-known army soldier, and now he's off the streets, and which is a very positive thing for him. Where someone else is not an athlete in any other sport, and that person got picked on, come to wrestling, more of an individual sport, now that person has confidence in themselves as well. Which I also have a story just recent. A senior here came in last year as a junior, began his junior year, weighing up over 240 pounds. Now he's weighing 160 pounds, and that just gave him confidence as for him human being. So not just being an athlete in wrestling or in accomplishing big goals in wrestling, you can also accomplish goals within your personal self.
Is there a certain way that you have to teach to your high school students that you wouldn't see in college?
Yeah, especially in this community. This is not the Midwest where all they know is wrestling and football. This is a community where we live in Los Angeles, eastern Los Angeles, and where they're known to play football, basketball, baseball, and soccer. I mean, the real basic sports that everyone does know how. So, I mean, no one comes out here knowing anything about wrestling, and they know wrestling. They're like, oh, it's lucha libre, Spanish wrestling, and so they come in with us jumping off the ropes, which we have nothing on it. So yeah, it's a big difference between college and high school. Where high school, I'm teaching those developments, those basic developments of wrestling. So when they get to the college level, it's no more teaching. I mean, there's very little teaching, but it's all about drill, and that's all they do is drill, drill, drill. All right, give me a double leg, give me a fireman, give me sprawls. That's just a total difference between college and high school.
As a wrestling coach, what parts of your body and your athletes do you try to strengthen up the most, and why?
A lot of it's legs. You need to learn how to be in a squat position most of the time. So I do like to work on the legs, but that's not just the areas where I'm really concerned about. You need to learn how to lift someone, so that's leg muscles. Leg muscles, you need to learn how to drive someone off the floor. Off their feet, so that's again leg muscles. So when you take shots, that's all coming through your legs. But also I really kind of pay attention to the core, the stomach, the lower back, just in your midsection, because you're going to be twisting a lot. You're going to be using those muscles that you never thought you're going to be using. Especially if you're coming your first day of wrestling, or several weeks, you're going to notice that soreness in your body. Like, whoa, where did I get that muscle from? So those muscles will be sore. So you really want to concentrate on the midsection. And then the upper part of the body is triceps, because we're constantly pulling. We're pulling all the time, pulling the legs, we're pulling the arms, we're putting the full body in. So it's more triceps than biceps. I always tell my wrestlers, biceps just looks. Shoulders, you're always lifting. You always, you gotta keep your elbows in tight. You gotta bring that leg up, or you gotta make sure the head's down. And shoulders are very important. Upper back is part of your shoulders as well, and then the last part is your neck. If you look at a lot of wrestlers, they have bulky necks because we teach our wrestlers not to get pinned, not to be on their back. So they have to neck bridge, and then just besides their own body weight, you're also gonna neck bridge when someone else's body is on your chest, and you're gonna neck bridge and get off your back. So those are the most important body muscles that a wrestler should have and work on when they're getting ready during the off season.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.